So we'll move into a panel here, and I guess the place that I think would be interesting to start the discussion comes back to value. And so I'll define a little bit of what I'm thinking by the question of value here, but I think that Klas had an interesting quote, which is our customers are done with us. So when we think about value that the general contractor industry is providing today to customers, we started to hear about the North Star of where these transformational efforts are going. And there's alignment, I think, in seeing different shifting roles, different engagement with how we think about a trade versus a component, new types of folks being brought into our industry. So my question here that I think I'd like to start the panel with is, when we think about value for the customer, how do we start to approach making sure that the customer is seeing value here? Because it also seems in these discussions and just from our own experiences, right, there's a cost as well to this. And so where is industrialized construction from a value perspective and a cost, and where does it stabilize for the industry? So I'll throw that out and see if anybody's interested in the first stab on those themes.
So maybe I'll take a stab at this, Jen. I mean, I think this has to add value to the customer. There's no doubt about it. And I think about, sort of what is a value that the customer typically looks for from us. It's cost, it's delivering something faster, it's meeting the purpose that they're trying to build for, and all those things. And to me, whenever I sort of look at the case studies that we have done, there's the value that has been created for the work that we do. So us doing a modular something in a facility, like be it a load bearing structure or a wall panel or whatever, we are essentially optimizing that for us, but we have to think about the overall. So gaining a month on a drywall schedule doesn't really help. It has to translate to all those other things that it has to translate to the overall sort of schedule savings for the customer. And I think that's where I sometimes feel like our team struggle is, we approach it sort of very much from our perspective, saying, yeah, save this for this trade, but it really, you at the end of it didn't really translate to value for the customer. So
sure. I'll throw something out there. Maybe we need to redefine entirely what we do as being non-value added activities, and then switch the whole focus into, does our solution improve the throughput of the client, right? If that goes all the way up to that, do they can now create 2 chairs instead of one? Now, that solution we put around that, or that vessel that we have created for them to do their business, if that is improved, because if not, I think if we're looking at how do we create value and we do it on our level and down, we're not going to have the large leaps that we have to take, I believe, to bring in some different kind of thinking in the industry. So I'll throw that out there. If not, I agree with the steps to improve that incrementally, but
I think there's big components on the customer experience, right? In terms of how people get to that next level of value. But before we spend too much time here, let's open it up and see if there's any questions here in the audience before we go too much further. Looks like there's a question right here.
Is this on? I want to also bring in our online people, because we had one really interesting question that I want to start with, and then we can ask one from the room. But Solomon Ives asked the question, how can traditional consultants, and I think this means kind of engineering, structural engineers, architects, prepare to better serve industrial contractors like yourself that are industrializing? So what are the things that you need from the kind of traditional, I'd say, design consultants, if I understand the question correctly?
I'm happy to jump in there. So I've had a lot of discussions with architects about this process, and they're kind of all over the map. There are some that are resistant, and there's a lot that look at it and go, wow, if we're using standardized components, standardized assemblies, it makes my job a lot easier. No longer do I have to custom detail everything. Do I have to worry about things that are not high value creation? I can focus my time on efforts on really the wow moments on a project, creating a fantastic end asset for the end user. And I don't need to worry about all the stuff that you don't see that's in the ceilings, that's in the walls, that's on the roof, and it's going to make my job easier. And so I think we need their acceptance of, we have standardized products and components. They need to be incorporated into your model so that we can deliver a great, efficient project for our customers.
I think, Dan, I mean, I think it's an interesting question. And, when I talk to, Greg Luth, who many of, I think, the CIFE community knows, I look at sort of, consultants, engineers are sort of, problem solvers at heart. And to me, I think the common sort of complaint that I hear is they don't feel valued in the current process for the knowledge that they bring. And I feel like, I think this is a great opportunity for any designer to really bring that knowledge on how do you componentize something that, I think you showed an example of, taking something that was developed and really changing that so that we can bring that value. And I think, we have tried that out with Greg on a couple projects, and people are really excited. I think they love this work because they feel like they're not becoming these production houses that are spitting out, SDs and DDs and CDs, but really looking at something that they were trained to do and bring that knowledge into making something happen. That's and it comes through that collaboration with everyone. I think it's exciting, honestly.
I think Klas wanted to say something, and it looks like.
I would just say too, that I think that it's imperative that designers and consultants start to see their role in driving this. FMA designed for manufacturing is a design function. And unless they will be marginalized in industry, and this is not because of our preference, it's just what's going to happen. And you see in other industries, you see the president. Unless you take the leadership role there, it's going to probably hurt somehow.
I think it ties back to your first question, where it's really getting to know your customer and understanding the pain points of that customer. And so we have a great partnership with a structural engineering firm that visits us all the time and understands our capabilities within our factory, and then partners with us on our design and really, challenges us and we challenge them. And it's all about the throughput that we can get through, right? So I think it all goes back to just that great partnership and understanding your customer.
Hello, hi, Mustafa Hosseini from Google. I'm a senior category manager for construction, focusing on data center construction across North America. So we've talked about value here, and I think great comments. So I have a two-part question. How do you envision the delivery model evolution in a standard cost plus GMP CM at risk model? How do you entice the GC to do better, to go towards prefabrication and DFMA and all the good stuff we have talked about? And then how do you see this? Is it more traditional design bid build? Are we going more towards design and build? How do you envision the trade partners as part of the pre-con? And then the second part of the question is, how do you standardize means and methods as part of the scope, in addition to the shop drawings and making components componentized? I think that was the word that was used. So would like to hear from the panel. Thank you.
So I think in a design bid build world, this is really challenging. There's a lot of resistance. The contracts are not set up to support it. And so we are primarily focused on, if we can be the design builder, even better if we can be the developer and design builder, where there's as little resistance as possible. We're starting there. And it's a little bit like the Tesla model around, you have to start somewhere. And if you can start with the least resistance, then you can gain traction, and you can begin to drive down costs. I think an owner can make a massive input on it, because an owner can make a mandate around, we're going to do IPD, we're going to do integrated. We have a customer that said, we want you to get to 38% modular on a project. It would be the furthest we've ever gone. Things like that can really, if the team is on board and integrated as one entity, can really make it happen, even in more, conventional delivery models. But the contract structure, the team structure, and the, collaboration are all needed to make it happen.
Yeah, I think like we sort of talked about, I feel like the opportunity is at the intersection of, what traditionally are the trades, when you think about a component-based approach and all that. And I think that requires, in my mind, like a seat at the table. You talked about trade contractors, bringing them in early, bringing the builders to the table early so that you can essentially think about how are we going to do this the most efficient way. And I do agree. I think, I mean, an owner plays a huge role. I think Klas talked about, there are some owners that are more ready than others to do that. But it does require, I mean, I think where we have been, successful is on healthcare projects, here where, Sutter Health, for example, or others that have really taken this approach of bringing the team together, getting them to work collaboratively, offering them incentives to collaborate and really think about, how they're going to do stuff differently. I think that's what I would say is required. And I think the policy is that you can have means and methods be separated from design. I think the concept of sort of product, process, organization, design has to be integrated for all of this to work. And the only sort of really player that can make that happen for us here is the owner. So I think basically say that I think you guys as owners play a huge role in creating the conditions of success for this kind of an effort.
And lastly on that too, you're creating a really tightly coupled production system, right? You're taking it to either putting it in an assembly line. If you have one piece there, it could be a really small piece that is not playing with the rules, you're upsetting the entire thing. In construction on a site stick build, you might not have that much pressure, but I think in a factory, everyone has to be aligned, and I don't see how you can get there with a design bid build approach at all. I think we will get there when we have way more specified and structured fabrication lines, but today we wouldn't touch that.
What about the GMP part of the structure? Do you guys see a future state past a GMP type contract that changes the value proposition between the general contractor and the owner?
So most people don't ask a car company that if you can produce this a little bit better, you're gonna have to send me a check in 2 weeks. And I think that there has something to do with that. You got to have some drive for commercial interests to actually improve. And there's nothing more driving you more than be able to put a little bit more in your own pocket. So there is a balance there that I think might be rude to talk about, but I do think that it's important, especially in the earlier phases, because we take an enormous amount of risk. And if we can't capture those profits as well, at least reasonably, it would be very difficult for us to get where we need to go.
Interesting. Okay. So I think you have a question over there already? Okay.
Yeah. Carl Fenstermaker with Southland Industries. Wanted to ask you guys, so we heard about how we should be trying in order to change things, we should be trying new things. We might fail, we should learn from them. I'm wondering with the whole Katerra, they tried to do something, didn't quite get there. What should our industry be learning about what they tried to do and how can we build on it?
I mean,
that's a big topic for the Atul reception, but we can see what the quick answers we can get.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't pretend to know what happened at Katerra. I think there's probably, a bunch of folks here who used to work at Katerra that I think you can talk to. But I mean, I think one thing that I would say is, I feel like Jan Hendrik used this word cooperation or collaboration. I do feel like I think that's the key to making things happen. I think if we pretend to know everything and solve everything, I don't think it's going to work. I think there's a reason the way industry has evolved the way it has, and I feel like I think that collaboration and integration of design, what you bring to the table, what we bring to the table is sort of the key. And I felt like, my experience working with Katerra was sort of that might have been missing. So there's again speculation. I didn't work there, so.
I also won't speculate on Katerra, but I would agree with what Klas said earlier about maybe asset light approach. If you're figuring things out, understand where your bottlenecks are, understand where your inefficiencies are in the factory before you start putting a lot of automation in the process, because then you risk investing a lot of capital for something that may not have gotten you the benefit that you thought you were going to get. So focus small, just start somewhere and then measure the process, and what gets measured gets improved.
We talked about this in length last night, and I think it was pointed out as well earlier here. Let's go back on in your keynote that we love to look at this as a virtual venture capital play, right? You throw money at it and it will scale and everything will work. And we just think that it will help with strong investments and like that, but you still have to mature into something like you were saying earlier in your speak. And I think it really is something we've seen. It has a certain speed of change or inertia towards learning these things well. And it's not much you can do with just that approach alone. You gotta really think through that and go through the pain on step by step. And quicker you get through the pain, the quicker you get there. And I think that would be a general thing we see.
Okay, so we have one last question for the panel today, right here in the front.
Thanks for taking my question. What are your emerging, right? Oh, Reshma Singh, Department of Energy. So what are your emerging business models around two very important trends in the sector right now, which is around number one, sustainability in terms of waste to materiality, circular economy. And the second is around intelligent buildings, especially around embedded sensors, controls, etc.
So I can touch on sustainability. And I think, there's a massive amount of waste in the construction industry. If you think about somebody's buying metal studs that are 10 feet long, they're buying 4x8 sheets of drywall, they're being cut in place custom, and it's all being hauled off by labor to a dumpster, then to be trucked somewhere. We think we can cut waste probably greater than in half by moving to a factory environment. And so that's, I think, where we're focusing because we have the most control over it to start with. But yeah, I see industrialization as a huge opportunity to reduce waste and excess energy production in the construction industry.
I think, I would agree. We are seeing anywhere from 5 to 10% sort of just material reductions when we even use things like virtual design and construction. Not even industrialized construction probably leads to even more reduction in waste that's going into the landfills, which big cause from our industry. I think you asked about intelligent buildings. Again, to me, I think the technology is there. We have built net zero office buildings ourselves. It does require a level of sort of thinking in the design process on how you're going to do that. I think the whole digital twin concept that Jan Hendrik talked about. A lot of that is possible right now, but I think the return on investment and the upfront sort of thinking and cost that it takes, I think is really, I feel like what's needed to make that happen. And there are really good examples. I think this building has tried to be that. So yeah.
Alrighty, thank you. So with that, I'd like to thank our speakers today, Atul, Klas, Jean, and Nate. And I think we have a short break right now, right, Daniel? And we'll do a 10-minute break and we'll be back at the top of the hour. Great, thank you.